All right, good morning, everybody. TG here. It is November 24th. We got one more day until Thanksgiving, so we're looking forward to that. Markets probably not doing too much today. We're going to be diving in, going through a few different ones and different areas and sectors to talk about. And other than that, we got no market open tomorrow. Friday is going to be a shortened day. Probably not too much going on there. So we'll dive through. You guys start giving me into some names, tickers that you're looking at, something of interest or that you're curious about. We'll kind of see what's going on with it. Other than that, kind of broad-based approach today and see what kind of activity we had earlier in the week since the market did pull back for a few days, a couple days. All right. So if you guys have any questions about me, if you're new to who I am and what I do, you can come over here to profitpilot.com and check out my newsletters and any services that I offer as far as the alerts and education, all that kind of stuff. So check out over there. And let's get to the charts. The first thing I want to do is to kind of just talk about the markets in general. What I have been discussing with my subscribers is that, at some point this market needs to pull back. If we look at the daily chart, we have just been seeing price run the daily 8 EMA the entire time. So it's, pretty bullish, but at some point that's going to wear out. And so then what I was looking for is we need to see price start to come back down to about the daily 21. That's the first line in the sand. And that's what we got here. This was an inverse trampoline move. So remember, the rule for the inverse trampoline move is price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0. And we have been seeing that happen and develop for several days over the last 2 weeks. So price kept pushing up, Moxie indicator kept going down. It was telling me and giving us warnings that the market was likely to run out of steam and start to move down. Well, we got that for the last 2 days. And you can see that price generally went to the daily 21, which should be, as I said, the first line in the sand. We should find some support there. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if we get a little bit of a bounce or a bump or whatever. But what that's going to do is if price comes back over the hourly 50, we're going to still have the Moxie indicator below 0. So I'm cautious about that. And I'm not really believing the up move that might be happening if it does off of the daily 21. So kind of keep that in mind. After that, we're going to have to see if price really just wants to go sideways for a longer or if it's going to want to make its way down a little bit lower, closer to the daily 50. We're basically seeing the same thing in the NASDAQ. And the change was that the other day, price got underneath the 15-minute 50 right there. And that's what's helped send it down yesterday and the day before. So we got that. And then we got the IWM, small caps. They tried to break out. I'm hoping that this is not a false breakout. I'm hoping that this ends up just being a pullback into support and that it can eventually rally and actually keep moving up out of its multi-month sideways flagging pattern, like 8+ months. So we're going to have to keep watching this and see if this is actually going to be able to get legs again or if that was just a giant pop and flop for the indexes. So we just don't know yet. They're still down, waiting for them to find some support. Now, from there, let's dive in. All right, so AA, Alcoa Aluminum, actually looking pretty good. I know that John Carter made a trade on that one. It's a little messy for me. It's not exactly what I would be looking for, so not quite my territory. If we do look here at the monthly and weekly, the one thing I was noticing is that it was flagging into the weekly 21 EMA. So far that should be some support. And it does look fairly orderly, where price is just kind of going sideways like this. And if it can continue to maintain that support on this time frame, then we should get the other time frames to continue moving up. On the daily and the hourly, the only thing I could really see here is there's a bit of a level right there. And we did get some positive Moxie divergence. And then we do have the Moxie indicator firing. And we do have price over the hourly 50. If this is going to continue to the upside, then I'd like to see price continue to follow the hourly 50 like that. So just kind of keep an eye out for that and see if that's going to continue to work out. All right, so let's see. AFRM. Yeah, I don't see much. This was another one that I could never quite find a place or a way in on this on the way up, mostly because on the daily chart, if you look at this, third ATR and pulled back, and then third ATR and pull back, third ATR pull back, and then it finally gave it a little bit of a go at it. None of these really gave me a good setup. I couldn't find anything on the 15-minute time frame to jump in. It was always like, well, you're just going to have to close your eyes and buy the dip and see if that worked out. So it just didn't set up the way that I could. Now, once that happened, though, here was a nice run up into earnings, and it seems like it was a buy the rumor, sell the news. So, big news with, I think, Apple. They're merging or working together or something like that. And then earnings, and they're getting hammered on earnings. Once that happened, I look at this and say, well, it wasn't too surprising. There was a pretty big gap between price and the daily 50. So that looked a little bit unsupported, and oftentimes price does like to get back down to support, and in this case, I think it would be the daily 50. It's going below it. I haven't seen a turnaround. What you can see is on the hourly chart, talking about those inverse trampoline moves right here. Price was trying to get up over a downtrending hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator below zero. So according to the Moxie indicator and its rules, this was never a good long trade. That was in fact a either short trade because of an inverse trampoline move, or you just need to be aware that that's not going to work out to the long side. So that was a false move up. We could even see before earnings that there was a bit of a heads up, just like the S&P itself. I was talking about at the beginning of this session that the S&P hourly had an inverse trampoline move, which is what we started to see as the market started to pull back and drop. Well, you'll notice that this was also an inverse trampoline move. Price kept trying to move up while the Moxie indicator kept trending down. So this is really where the strength of the indicator comes in and tries to tell you, hey, this is not a good situation to be long, and that's going to be a problem. So it's been pulling back. At this point, I don't see anything yet. There's just nothing constructive. It isn't holding the 15-minute 50. It's not holding. It's not even near the hourly 50. The only positive I could say is that this is a potential trampoline move on the daily, but we got to wait until price actually starts to turn direction and start holding moving average support. So just nothing there yet. So Joe, yep, VYGVF was another one that I was actually talking to my subscribers about yesterday. This is in the Bitcoin crypto space as a miner. And if we look at the higher time frame, it's looking pretty good. The only thing I'll say is of the miners, it has pretty low volume. So just keep that in mind that maybe not too many people actually know about this ticker. And if you want to buy something that's going to actually work out pretty well, oftentimes you want something that has a lot of volume because that means a lot of people know about it. But I will say, it had a nice move up like this, and it is pulling back down to the weekly 8, 21, and the 50. So there are 3 moving averages, and maybe even the weekly 30 right there, which is the green line, that are all acting right together as a good potential support. So I would look at that and say, hey, all these moving averages are in the same place, and price is right there on it. So that should be pretty nice. So Joe, also what I talked about is compared this to Riot. Riot is kind of in the same picture, the same setup, especially on the daily chart. It's the 50 200 50 maneuver that I'm looking at, and you can see that we have price up over the 50, and it got a little overbought, and now it's coming back down to test some support. We don't know where that support is yet. I'm still not entirely confident that right here is the support, because if you look at the daily chart, I'd say there's a bit of a gap between price and that 50, and that might not be ready yet. On the hourly, I'd say, well, it's probably the hourly 200 that is acting as support. But if we're going to say that this thing is ready to go or in an uptrend yet, I can't, because it is still underneath a downtrending hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator below zero. So until that situation or that condition changes, I got to keep waiting, because that hourly 50 could still act as resistance and could push price down. Or if it is going to work to the upside, then we actually need to see price get on top of that moving average and then use the moving average for guidance. Leonardo, I'm not sure what you're asking. Which software do I use? Well, this is Thinkorswim, the platform that I'm on. So if that's kind of the question that you had, other than that, the indicator that I keep talking about is the Moxie indicator, which is the indicator that I designed and worked and built myself, and then we sell through Profit Pilot and Simpler Trading. So hopefully those are the questions answering you. All right, Marco, let's see. Netflix, I think last week I talked about this. I said, it seems to me like Netflix probably needs to chill out a little bit. And so in through here, I was basically noticing that was an inverse trampoline move. Like we saw, you can see here, price was trying to get up over the hourly 50, but the Moxie indicator was still below zero. So I looked at that and said, that's price leading the indicator. That's not usually the way we want to see that. And eventually I'd like to see if price can test the hourly 50 for support. And you can see right here, when it finally got to the hourly 50, it just fell right through it. So I'm kind of viewing this as more of a flag going sideways, mostly because that was a pretty darn good run on the daily chart. And you can see that run meant that price was not even touching the daily 50. And so at some point, just like the ticker I was talking about before, at some point, price is going to want to get closer to that daily 50. And what we can see here is it's flagging sideways as it gets closer to the daily 50. So we're going to have to continue to wait and watch and see if the daily 50 is going to be support or not. And I don't have that answer yet because, well, price is still below all these moving averages and there's no setup. So for now, flagging sideways. And let's see a coin. So looking at the whole Bitcoin space, we've been watching this. I have another trader friend of mine who's been projecting $300 for the pullback. I mean, he's pretty darn close. And other than that, same kind of deal as Netflix. You can see how coin was very far away from the daily 50. So just kind of waiting for price to come on back down to that. We're going to have to see where it's going to find some support, but I still can't see it yet because, well, price is still below the hourly 50. Moxie indicator is still below 0. The 8 is below the 21 and price is still below the 15-minute 50. So we have to continue to wait and watch this pullback and just see when is it going to be finished pulling back, and then we can jump in on it to the long side. Apple, they had this huge move based on something about them getting into the autonomous car space, and I think they gave a date or year as to when theirs was going to be ready. So a bit of a FOMO news-driven thing like that. Cool. If you were able to catch it, great. You can see here the move started right as price got over the 15-minute 50. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is what we need to look for when it comes to Netflix or coin or even the VYGVF ticker that I was talking about for Bitcoin. I want to see price get over the 15-minute 50 and start trending up and following it. And so far, we're not seeing that on most of these other names. And then I want to see price get over the hourly 50 and start trending up. And I want to see the Moxie indicator cross over 0 and fire to the long side. But we're still a ways away from that. So that's why we have to kind of keep waiting for some of these other names. That being said, as far as Apple goes, this move was just too much. Like, these are the parameters and the things that you can look at to say, hey, it's a good time to either take some profits off or take some risk off, and definitely don't try to enter a new fresh trade on these things. When they are that high, they're outside of that third daily ATR, they're very far away from the hourly 50. These things they're just too far up, and you got to wait for them to come back down. So pretty easy to see that this is going to come back down at some point. The question is how far and where. I think it's going to keep going further. I think this gap between price and the hourly 50 is unsupported. And I'm looking at this on the 15, seeing that price is probably going to get rejected by the 15-minute 50 and the Moxie indicators below 0. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Apple pull back more. So however that works out for your trading and your setup, there you go. All right, MIME, man, I haven't seen this name in forever. Mostly because they just, yeah, you can see I have some notes on it from way back when. It just kind of never went anywhere. It was just chopping around for a long time. Gosh, that being said, yeah, it's had a really good move. Here's your Moxie price trigger. It got a little overbought there, pulled back to support, and it looks to me like it's kind of getting overbought again. So just from the monthly and weekly standpoint, I'd be looking at this and say, hey, last time it got up there, it pulled back. And this time that it's up there, seems like it would be likely to pull back. How about this on the monthly? It is outside of the third ATR on the monthly. And anytime you can see it gets close to the third ATR, it does tend to pull back. So just on those time frames, I'd say be careful. And then here, you can see again, it was just riding that third ATR on the daily chart, and at some point it's going to pull back. And you can see there was a giant gap between price and the daily 50, just like back here. And it seems to me it's pulling back. You can see on the hourly chart, price up, Moxie indicator down. So there's your negative divergence. And where did that start? Look at the 15 right there. We got price underneath the 15-minute 50, and the Moxie indicator was very, very red. And this thing just waterfalled off. So pretty clear picture on as far as how that pullback started. It started right there on the 15-minute 50 very, very clearly between the Moxie indicator and the moving average. So hopefully you caught that and were able to get out or kind of feel a little bit off. So let's see. Then we get into HUT and sorry. Yeah. Got a package being delivered. Hang on. She's going to be barking for a minute. All right. So But look at this. Same thing. It got really, really overbought. And if we look up here, we can kind of see the same thing, even as Mime. Look at this. Outside of that weekly third ATR on the monthly, outside of the monthly third ATR, just it was really, really overbought. Very, very high. We can kind of see, same thing here and here. So we've been expecting these things to pull back. We're looking for better opportunities to get in, and I like them. I like the sector, but we're gonna have to wait and see where they actually want to come back down and find that support. Right now, I'm looking at the daily 50. We don't know yet though because it hasn't actually confirmed that it wants to move back up. So it's at the daily 50. It looks like it's trying because it looks like there's a bit of a double bottom here, and we are starting to see some positive divergence on the 15-minute time frame, but it hasn't changed direction. So that's just we got to keep waiting. I think that's kind of the name of the game right here. Is I have things I'd like to see, but we have to wait until they happen. Amazon, I just kind of been watching this. The only move that I saw, or the only thing I could really point out, was here's a double top, and you can see price got to the third ATR on the daily time frame, and then it's like, okay, it's most likely price is going to get knocked back down, which it did. At this point, if we zoom in on the daily, I'm kind of questioning two things. Either one, I'm wondering if price is going to need to get back closer to the daily 50, which I understand is a long way. That wouldn't be great. Or the daily 21 is going to continue to be support, and we'll see how that needs to shape up. You can see we're just possible trampoline move on the hourly, but we are still below the 15-minute 50. And so, I'd like to say it's in an uptrend, and that it'll keep going from that direction. But you have to make sure, if for now, that price is going to actually stay above the daily 21. All right. And then Disney. Whoops. Doesn't look like much is happening there. I do know that there was some news, I think, that came out right there about Disney saying that their fourth quarter was going to be pretty tough. They were going to have some COVID related troubles, mostly because people are having COVID and they couldn't go to sound lots and make movies. And so there were delays and all this kind of stuff. So Disney has kind of been in trouble since then. And basically, you can see that price got underneath the daily 50. The Moxie indicator has been below zero this entire time. It's never gotten over zero. And price never held the daily 50. And in fact, it keeps getting rejected by the daily 50. And then it had earnings and continued to plunge. So, Ethan, I don't know. Hopefully you're short on this and that's the way you want it to be. Otherwise, I don't see anything. I don't see any slowing down. It is a little extreme on the short side, but whew, I hope you're stepping aside, or you can play it short. Pneumatic, nice. Let's see. It took me a second to see what's going on there. So Deere mostly hasn't been doing anything for quite some time, so it's just has not been on my radar. It's also kind of a bigger, slower stock. But if you look here on the monthly and the weekly, it seems as though mostly what it's been doing is just flagging to support. It really hasn't, as I said, gone anywhere, but it's also not falling apart. It had a massive move right here over on the weekly chart. I mean, this thing and the monthly, it's just massive, for its kind of stock. Very, very massive. And so at some point it became overbought. You can see the giant gap between price and the moving averages for support. Now, what's amazing is that it has gone only sideways. So pneumatic, I would actually say that this is a pretty good situation. If you guys are interested in this kind of stock, or however quickly it moves, I'd say generally it's good. The fact that it has gone sideways for so many months and hasn't gone down should be a sign of strength. And especially now that it's coming into the weekly 50, it should be good. And if we look here, start to kind of drill down on these lower time frames that just had earnings, so up on earnings. And right here, I like the fact that it has gotten over the daily 50 and then it pulled back into the daily 50 to apparently test that for support. I'm also seeing that the hourly 200 has gone from a downtrend to an uptrend, and now price is starting to engage with this stuff. So, trust but verify. Keep watching this. Make sure that price does, in fact, start to follow and hold these moving averages. But overall, yeah, I'd say Deere looks pretty good in that way. All right, then let's see. Pepsi Yeah, just some bigger names that I don't normally. Where's my trade? We'll look on the higher time frames. Mostly because they're big blue chip stocks. They're slow and don't do too much, which is I think kind of the point. The only thing I can point out, just kind of like what we talked about earlier in the session today, is that on the hourly chart, I see that that is an inverse trampoline move. So stepping back, you can see that price went higher, Moxie indicator went lower. It's a heads up that price is moving up on less energy. And then what I could see is there's a double top and then negative divergence, and the Moxie indicator is below zero. So it looks to me, according to the indicator, that this is probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon, and it might drop a little bit. And looking here on the daily and on the daily, what I would say is, you know what, it might want to get closer to that daily 50. In a similar way, right here, that price went sideways and wanted to get closer to the daily 50. And even through here, you can see that price was off of the daily 50. So the daily 50 tends to be support. And with the hourly chart saying, well, it's not quite ready yet, that might be something you need to keep an eye out. It's a big, slow stock, and I don't know how much it's going to do. Coke, eh, same thing. Like, what is this thing doing? It seems like not the greatest vehicle to be in. Doesn't really want to be doing much. The only benefit I can say is that it did get over the daily 50, and we'll have to see if it can hold the daily 50. But it should be clear that price was going to come back down because the Moxie indicator still is not over zero. So make sure this doesn't go the way of the Disney, where price fails the daily 50 and then just keeps trending down. I don't see anything yet on the hourly. In fact, price just ran into the underside of a downtrending hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator below zero. So that's why I see price going down. It's very much similar to that. Price underneath the 50, Moxie indicator below zero. You can see price continued down. And then let's see, McDonald's, another big, slow stock. Looks similar to Pepsi, but looks better. You can see that this was actually a regular trampoline move, priced below the 50, but the Moxie indicator above zero. That's buoyant. That's price wants to go up in that case. And yeah, you're getting price following the hourly 50. So just make sure price continues to follow the hourly 50 and doesn't actually get rejected at this double top. And then other than that, if price can continue to follow the daily 21, then great. And if it doesn't, then you'll have to reassess and see what's going on with that one. But that's McDonald's. And then TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor, you can see I've kind of been watching this. It's another kind of challenging one because if you look, it's just been going sideways for a very long time. But also, kind of like Deere, this could be a good thing in the fact that it hasn't gone down. It just got really, really overbought, very extended. And all it's trying to do is go sideways into some support of the what looks to be the weekly time frame. So let's see if that thing can keep going and finding that support. And on the daily chart, the only thing I got is we got a fresh Moxie price trigger. And then this is a regular trampoline move and a regular trampoline move. So those are good things. The only other thing I'll point out is that the daily 50 is still flat. It is not yet in an uptrend. And that might make price kind of have to do this a little bit until it can actually start to engage with that moving average. All right, then let's see. Cat's probably very similar to Deere. Looks a little bit weaker than Deere. It's actually below these moving averages. The only thing I'm kind of seeing here from this standpoint is if you guys are familiar with my elf shoe pattern, leg, heel, arch of the foot, ball of the foot, elf toe. Otherwise, what this could be is an inverse head and shoulders. And so that should be bullish if that continues to work out. So there's your inverse trampoline move. And if we look at the daily and the hourly, I'm seeing some developments. Here is price over the daily 50, and now it's coming back down to test the daily 50. The other thing, talk about timing. Notice that the Moxie indicator is starting to cross over zero. It's starting to go positive at the same time that price is testing the daily 50. That's pretty good. That should be perfect. That should be exactly what we want to see because we want to see the Moxie indicator go positive, and we want to see price use the 50 as support. Now, the only other thing I could be asking for from this is I want to see then price do the same thing on the hourly chart. I want to see price get over the hourly 50, which it is. And then I want to see price follow an uptrending hourly 50. And that's not quite here yet. Notice that the hourly 50 is still in a downtrend. So we want to see the hourly 50 go up like this, and we want to see price follow it like that. So, if we're going to talk precision, might need a little bit more time to get that hourly chart figured out. But if we're talking on the daily chart, this should be good until it isn't. The price at the daily 50 should be good until it proves otherwise. All right. Well, we're going to be starting to wrap it up here. Don't know what she's barking at. Target, oh, not seeing too much. The only thing I point out is this was an inverse trampoline move. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0, just like we saw on Disney. And so at this point, we're going to have to wait and see, is the daily 50 going to be support? And we don't know that yet because, well, price is still underneath the hourly 50 and the Moxie indicator is still below 0. So not much there. All right, guys. Sorry about the dog today, but we'll go wrap that up. It is pretty much Thanksgiving week. Feels like a weekend. It's Wednesday, so you guys, we're going to be having the market closed tomorrow. I hope all of you have a good time with your family, friends, whatever it is. And we'll see you again next week. So take care. If you have any questions, come over here to profitpilot.com, and we'll see you next week.